Well, good afternoon. Hello. Hi. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi. What's up? So, happy Monday to you, or I guess it's Monday evening for a lot of you. But and I'm sorry we started so late, but it's just been busy. So, a couple of things. I already first of all, new short just went out today. I hope people will watch that. Right now it's got one view, which isn't great. I'm hoping that we can all fix that. That's part one. And then part two is I just found a bug. There's a bug in my code, and it's not even that hard a bug, but it's a bug. Notice that we've got this part two, and I've just remember that I don't know if some of you were here. I was in the I was setting up the stream itself. I was tinkering with StreamYard, and it wasn't great. Well, it was fine, but it was like 5 minutes of stuff, and then we didn't even get to use it. So I basically I just deleted that video. It's disabled or deleted on YouTube, but it's still in my database. Remember, we have some code that syncs the database to my local machine, to my API, right? And that's the other thing is where's part 3, 4, and whatever. So we've got a few bugs here. First of all, this shouldn't show. Remember that logic where we get the current videos? It should be. Remember don't we have a flag in there? I think we have a flag in there, something like that. So we need to take advantage of that. So let's fix that quick, and then we'll resume our journey with Spring Batch here. Let's see. CD. Do I have YouTube out here? Where's my code? Coffee Software Show. Repositories. YouTube service. Grab the bits. Bit clone. Right? Yep. YouTube service. Idea. Build.gradle. I'm gonna have several questions, like why is it not showing the latest videos, and also why haven't I seen? Well, basically, I get why I haven't seen why it's seeing the old one. We need to fix the query, but still, why is it doing that? Okay, so videos controller returns just the videos from the service, and the videos from the service are a function of a variable, and that variable we populate at the end of our whole pipeline. Where is this? It's select all from YouTube videos, and then we have a schema, right? And that schema, let's see here, where fresh equals true, right? We need that. That's the important bit there. So let's go to our go get YouTube service, select all from where fresh equals true. That's the important bit right there, right? We need that predicate. So now we know if the video is no longer appearing in YouTube, as is the case here, then we don't want to show. It'll be marked as not fresh when we do an update, right? We said everything not fresh equals true. Then we do the upsert. So anything that gets updated or inserted, that's true. Everything else is still false. Therefore, it's old and not present on YouTube. Gradle format, git commit, freshness, push. Okay, we'll let that do its thing. I'm also confused as to why the old videos aren't there. Forget about the issue with the stale video. Why aren't the new videos at all? What's that about? I don't even know. Is that the webhook thing that we set up? Where's that? There's the higher resolution. Let's go to Spring Batch. But I've done, parts 2, 3, and 4, and this is now 5. Where's all that, right? That's 111. I streamed all weekend. It's now the 13th. So 11 is Saturday, 12 is Sunday, and it's not here. Okay, well, we'll monitor that situation. Hopefully that fixes it. In the meantime, let's resume our journey of Spring Batch. Close that out. Okay. How's your weekend, everybody? How you doing? I suppose that's the real question. I think for my next series, we're gonna look at Spring integration. Spring integration. We need to understand Spring integration a little bit today, and unfortunately, I don't have a. I mean, you can check out Spring Tips, Spring integration, obviously, and I love Spring integration. It's one of the yeah. Here you go. Here's a gentle introduction to Spring integration that I did back in 2000, and it was 6 years ago. So 2017, I guess, right? Something like that. Maybe 16. Oh, 16. October 2016. And so it's a little dated, but it works. It's a quick code-centric view of Spring integration, and actually it was one of the first videos I did for my Spring Tips series, right? I have a long-standing Spring Tips series I've been doing for more than half a decade now. Obviously, 2016. So that series is it's just me looking at different parts of the Spring ecosystem, as I'm doing now, just with the ability to iterate more quickly on this new channel. And the reason I did Spring integration first is because I love Spring integration, right? It's the first project to which I contributed bugs in the Spring ecosystem. And so, given the chance, of course I would talk about that, right? It's I joined the Spring team because I was a contributor to open source, is Spring integration just XML files? No, goodness, no. Spring integration is not just XML files. It used to be, right? And some would even say that's one of the features of it, is that you have this declarative sort of markup that you can use to define integration flows. But no, it's, in fact, even in this 6-year-old video, I didn't use a line of XML except for Maven, right? So actually, you know what? Let's take a look at Spring integration quickly, just so we're on the same page. And actually, the reason I'm mentioning that is because we need to understand it for today's discussion of partitioning and chunking with Spring Batch. But we also need to understand it just because it's just very useful. And I actually had a question. Somebody asked me yesterday. Let me see. Oops. Doing that. Somebody asked me yesterday on the Twitters, and I try and help when I can. I'm not very good at the Twitters, but I try. Somebody asked me, what is the question? How do I get my note? Oh, here we go. This one. Somebody asked me, any good examples of Spring Boot Kafka for GraphQL subscription? So basically, GraphQL has this mechanism that you can use to return streams of data, reactive streams of data. And it's ongoing. So imagine like sensor data or feed data or something like that, right? And super useful, right? Super useful because it's a concession that there's different ways to ask a question. You can ask a question and have a finite response, and that's served by GraphQL queries, or you can ask a question and get an ongoing response, right? You get a response that streams data. So sensor data, stock ticker feeds, chats, you can imagine heartbeats, anything like that is ongoing and sustained. That would be a subscription. And there's a very natural way to model that in GraphQL. It's a different verb, in fact, right? Whereas with like HTTP, there's no natural way to do that. You end up doing tricks with the MIME types and all that. Like server-side events is disgusting, right? Just broken. It works, kinda, but it's not what anybody would design if they had to design a streaming protocol, right? It's just what we designed for HTTP, which wasn't designed for streaming at all. Okay, so anyway, I built this example, integration subscription. And so here, let me go to the client here. In serve. And the hardest part, honestly, was this JavaScript, right? Me, I'm not much of a JavaScript programmer. So idea build.gradle. Whoa, that's too big. Okay, font. default general. Why? Again, I'm perpetually confused. Okay, so is that it? Is that the 19? I don't know. What color scheme? What does my color scheme have to do with my font? Okay. Apply. Nope. 13. Nope. 14. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so font is good. So basically, it's a public static void main Spring Boot application, right? On the build, I've got Spring Integration Webflux and Spring Integration File and Spring Boot Starter integration. And by the way, I discovered that this isn't strictly speaking necessary. Like that'll actually work. Spring Boot manages even the sub modules in Spring integration, which is cool. But just to be explicit and clear about it, I'm using the imported properties map on the dependency management plugin for Gradle, for Spring Boot in Gradle. And I'm referencing this property. So I'm using the Spring Integration Webflux jar in the Spring Integration project and therefore managed to be at the version of Spring Integration. So the integration flow here, you know, I'm looking at data in a directory, file directory in, and whenever there's a new file, oh my God, I'm not sharing my screen. I'm not sharing my screen. This whole time I've been talking and there's been no, I'm so bad at this. I really, it's like I've never been on the internet at all. I'm just, that's embarrassing as can be. Okay, take 3, this time with more gusto. So I fixed a whole, wow, that's just so sad. That's just sad, friends. You deserve better. Yeah, let me know next time. I'm not all that smart. It's just so sad. I fixed a bug in the YouTube service here live. I get cloned it. I made a change to the code. I even pushed the change. If you go here, you refresh, you can see the change happened 8 minutes ago on stream, right? We've been talking for more than 8 minutes. It's been 16 minutes. So all that happened. The change was this Java, blah, 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 YouTube, aggregate, default, right? YouTube service. And we went down to here and we modified the query that gets run at the end of our thing. Select all from YouTube videos where. I added the where fresh equals true. And the reason we did that is because my website was showing a video that I deleted. So I had like let's code Spring Batch part 4.5. Like I had a 5-minute thing and it was showing that, but I deleted it, so it's showing a gray square here. You missed, oh my God, all the fun. We just missed all of it. So what a bummer. And here we are. Let's go. So it's since deployed. I did git commit and git push, deployed it. It's working. Good stuff. Okay, moving on. That's behind us. Now we're talking about Spring integration. And I did this Spring tips video 6 years ago. I also talked about that, but you couldn't see it because I wasn't sharing my screen like a dope. So here it is there. And so that's, this is the cache. This is the old page before the redeploy. See, it was showing me, let's code Spring Batch part 2, right? Remember I tinkered with my settings for like 5 minutes. We just fixed that. That's the thing you didn't see me fix on screen, even though I was typing and writing and talking to you. So anyway, if I refresh, you see that is no longer a problem. That's the new page that we just fixed, literally just minutes ago. Okay, moving on. So Spring integration. Here's this application that I in response to a question, this good question here. Any good examples of Spring Boot or Kafka, Spring Boot for Kafka Graphql subscriptions? And I said you can return a reactive stream from a Spring Cloud Stream Kafka binder, or you can use Spring integration. And here's an example using Spring integration. So I wrote some code last night, and I'll probably do a video. I'll probably do an actual dedicated video. But the basic setup is to use a Spring integration flow, right? And I'm using an inbound adapter. In this case, it's just a trivial toy, right? It could be any inbound adapter. That's the important part here, is the inbound adapter is basically the same from Spring Integration's perspective, but it's a thing that you plug into the first parameter of the .from method, and it produces messages based on events in the real world. In this case, it's the appearance of a new file in my desktop/in folder, okay, my inbox, if you will. So when a new file gets dropped in there, then Spring Integration publishes a message. I take that message, which is just a file, a Java IO file. You should just be able to inject them, right? The question is, how do you get environment variables into your tests? There's a couple ways. You could just inject your environment itself, right? And then, let me see, void init, whatever. You can say this .environment.get property home, right? Or home, whatever. Another thing you might try and do, and should work in the Spring test context, is just to dereference it like that. So both should work. Okay. Home is an environment variable, by the way, for those of you not on the Unix sphere. Okay, so basically, I'm getting messages. I get for every new file that appears, it sends a message out, and then the next step in the pipeline that gets the message at the input is this transform operation, which takes the message, which contains a payload of type file, and turns it into a file event, which is just this dummy object I created up here or down here. Record file event contains a path, and then the output of that transform operation is the file event that goes into the next operator or the operation, which is the handle. And there I just log out the headers associated with the message and the payload type and the path, which is a string I've got on my little record there. And then I return it, outward. And instead of returning an integration flow object, I'm using this new-ish operator from the last couple of years called toReactivePublisher. And what that gives me is a reactive stream, a publisher of message of file event. And that's what I'm returning from this integration flow. And then I'm injecting that here. I'm injecting a publisher of message of file event. And I'm using that to send it back to the subscription endpoint, or from the subscription endpoint. So I'm turning the publisher, the reactive streams publisher, into a reactor flux. And I'm mapping each message. I'm getting the payload so that the reactive stream that I get back is a publisher or a flux, a particular specialization of type file event. So let's restart that. And like I said, or you didn't maybe hear because you didn't see because I was off cam, but I started up this JavaScript app that I also wrote. So if you look at this here, I've got a client and a service. And okay, so if I go to the client, the client's running over here on localhost 3000. So localhost 3000. Okay, just look at the console here. Refresh. I've got the subscription. I'm subscribed to the subscription, but nothing has happened yet, right? And so I need to actually create the events, and I can do that by just dropping files in that folder. So let's go over here, cd desktop, cd in. So touch random, that's another environment variable. New file data, random, right? There it is. You can see on the left, as I'm adding things on the right, as I'm creating new files here, you can see on the left, it says new file data, blah, blah, blah. So wait for a second or two or three, right? So it's pretty quick, almost instantaneous. You get the notification, and it's a reactive stream. And I'm doing it with Spring Integration. And Spring Integration makes it easy for me to build these event-driven pipelines, right? And you can see I'm not using any XML, not even Maven this time. I'm just using Gradle. And so, okay, so that's basically Spring Integration. And we can expand on our example here. This is a bit of a, like, you need to know a bit about GraphQL, and you need to know a bit about Spring and messaging to appreciate this particular demo. So it's not exactly where I would start if I were teaching Spring Integration, but I think it's kind of cool. Like, it just works, right? So here, this Boolean is important as well. I'm telling Spring Integration to start the integration flow only once something has subscribed to it. So in this case, that'll be the Spring GraphQL framework, right? Spring GraphQL, when I return that reactive stream from the subscription, it will then start subscribing and emitting the values that come from it to the client. So does that help a little bit with Spring integration? A little bit. So basically, this is it. Right? It's just this integration flow. The only other thing you need to know is that you can send things out on channels. There's this concept of a channel. And so what's a good example? What's a good way to think about this? Here, I've got data where let's say I wanted to make this example a little bit more interesting, okay? Let's say that I wanted to get data from the file system, but also maybe there's some way to upload a file, and then that should also trigger new events in the stream, right? I don't know, maybe something like that, right? Or whatever. But the point is, I have this logic that exists here. I'm taking the file path and I'm turning it into a file event, and I'm doing that work. I want to centralize that logic, but I do want to have another way to get data into this pipeline. And so the way you do that is to string together things with channels. And you can see I'm already using a channel here, although I think I'm not using this anymore. Did I get rid of it? I think I got rid of it. Yeah, okay, so I'm not even using that anymore. But basically, you can use channels to make it easy to string together multiple pipelines. Okay, so what's a good example? I guess I could create like an HTTP. Imagine like I have an HTTP endpoint that sends data into the pipeline, right? So how would we do that? We'd say message channel. So HTTP, okay, return message channels dot direct dot get. There's my HTTP files. Okay, so this is going to be actually we just want files. There you go, files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this code so that there are two different sources of new file data. One could be the inbound file adapter, which is going to monitor our file system, and another might be, you know, paths that get sent via a web endpoint or something like that. Okay. So yeah, so that'll be that's what we're going to do. And we're going to say, as long as it comes from this files channel, then we can do the same logic. You know, everything else will be the same. So we'll say, so we comment that out and we'll say dot from this dot files. Okay. And from as each record comes in from the file channel, we'll take the data that passes through it, which we assume to be a file, and then we'll apply the transformation to turn it into a file event, and then we'll do that, and it'll continue to read the reactive stream. So now we've broken up the source of the data from how it gets consumed, and the benefit of that is I can build another Spring integration flow. So I can say file system integration flow. Okay. And I'll say return integration flow dot from, and here I'll have the file inbound adapter. Okay, so and the file is right here, and I'll say files, and then there I'll send it off to files, the channel that we got there. Okay, so dot get. Good. So there's I've now decoupled one thing from the other, which means I can also, you know, I can create a REST endpoint. Let's just say I create a REST controller here. And let's say I've got something, I don't know, what's some silly logic here, some endpoint, okay? If I call this endpoint files, so void, whatever, post mapping, okay? So I said post mapping files, request param. Is it request param? Let's try that. Okay, let's see if that works. turn. So we'll say this.files.send, and I'm going to send a message equals message builder.with payload new file. Say, whatever. Let's just final string home. Speaking of environment variables. Okay, home. We'll say a new file. Home. Desktop. New file. We'll call this repository. So we'll just, maybe somebody can trigger a message flow by sending a post to this files endpoint, and we'll send a message into the channel, and then the channel will, again, the file will either come from the HTTP endpoint or come from the file system inbound adapter. Yeah, it's so it basically enables you to treat different inputs, but I'm using the file system inbound adapter here, which is, it requires no extra infrastructure. That's why I like it so much. I don't have to spin up a database or a message queue or anything else to understand it, and you don't have to understand anything really to understand files, right? We all understand folders and files, but I don't have to teach you Kafka to understand the demo, right? But the point is, this is just one of countless adapters. So there's a Kafka inbound adapter, there's a JMS inbound adapter, a TCP inbound adapter, an email inbound adapter, a Twitter inbound adapter, a MQTT inbound adapter, a Kafka inbound adapter, and there's also outbound adapters. And that's the other part of the equation, right? Is you get data, it comes into the Spring integration, you've done some work, now what? You want to send it out somewhere. Maybe you want to send a message on, from your code off to Kafka or RabbitMQ or JMS, or send it as an email, right? You want to use the email adapter, right? Or send a TCP payload to a socket waiting somewhere. I mean, there's adapters for everything, right? And so, there's I use one of there's an adapter that I, believe it or not, contributed to Spring Integration more than a decade ago. It's called the feed adapter. It does RSS Atom, right? And that adapter, it turns out to be more useful than ever now that everything is RSS is kind of coming back, not for blogs, but for feeds, right? Like if you want to consume Mastodon, you don't need a special API. Just add that .rss to a Mastodon account, profile page, and you'll get a feed of the tweets, or of the toots rather, on Mastodon, for example. So same thing. I just did a demo the other day of WebSub, right? Google's PubSub Hubbub, right? That is a feed based protocol. You use RSS and Atom, so that this feed adapter allows you to look at new events and then respond whenever there's a new post, whenever there's a new entry in the feed. You get an event, right? So you can use the feed adapter instead of the file adapter, and so on. But the nice thing is that the code downstream, after you've done the inbound part, so this is my adapter, right? If I say inbound, rename inbound adapter, everything after that is completely oblivious to this part. So I can do from, and I can do a transform, I could do routing, I could do filtering, I could do fork, like split. I can split the message into multiple messages that get sent out to multiple channels. It's one message turns into many messages that get sent out on a channel, and if you're using a thread pool, then that can be done in concurrence, right? It can send as many messages as you want to across the same channel at the same time, and there'll be multiple, aggressive consumers that are, greedy consumers that will try and process the data concurrently, right? So the benefit of that is you can build these pipelines. It's just a pipes and filters pipeline, right? You can write code without worrying about the downstream or upstream components. As long as you've got really well delineated responsibilities, you know what the preconditions and the post conditions for your components are, it becomes very natural to compose these things, to pull them together into pipelines. I want to take this request, I want to decrypt it, or whatever. I want to use I've got some secure data that came in over a message queue. It's encrypted, but I have the secret, so I'll decrypt it. Then it's a zip file. I need to unzip it. That's another message. I split it into its constituent files. Each gets its own message. If there's 10 files and I have 10 messages, those each file is now a new message that goes through the pipeline. And then I go through and maybe I do some sort of operation on the file. Maybe I kick off a Spring Batch job for each one of them, right? Like I can say, okay, launch a Spring Batch job using the job launcher that we saw earlier. And then I can do some analytics on each file in concurrence using Spring integration. And then I want to join the results back up, right? So I split the data earlier on in the pipeline from one big file or zip file full of CSV. I split it up into a bunch of individual messages that for each file in the zip file. I did the processing in Spring Batch, and now it's time to join everything back together into one big report, and I can do that with the splitter and aggregator functionality, for example. And then I could take that data and then, maybe I need to prepare a report. I write that out to a CSV file, and then I compress that, or maybe I write that to the database instead, and then whatever. Or maybe I take that report and I send it via email as an outbound adapter. So the whole pipeline is just very natural, like you can build these little Lego brick pieces of the pipeline, test them out in isolation, make sure that the bit that takes a file and then creates an email works just fine. Then you put it into the pipeline. Make sure that the part that unzips the zip file and creates a bunch of small files, make sure that works great with your unit tests, and then you plug it into the pipeline, right? And you get this complex thing very easily because you can compose pipelines and things like threading and concurrency and all that stuff. It's all just handled for you, right? And even going a step further, those channels about which I spoke here, like this channel here, I'm using just an in-memory channel. This is a Java util queue, basically. Okay, but if you saw, if you go here, YouTube at Coffee Software, one of the coolest things I've seen recently, and I did a video about it as soon as I heard about it, was this. So our buddy Raphael Winterhalter, he wrote an article in the Java Advent Calendar back in December about how to use Spring integration, which is the technology about which we're speaking right now. How to use Spring integration as a message queue. And you can do that because it's got the support for listen and notify, right? So yeah, like in the example, and the whole video is like 6 minutes and 38 seconds. I hope you'll watch it. But in the example, we use a Postgres subscribable channel there. You can see that maybe, I don't know if you can see it, but there it is, Postgres subscribable channel. So basically we're using Postgres as a message channel. So when you write a message from an event source, like a file, the message is now durable. It gets persisted, just like it would in Kafka or whatever. It gets persisted in Postgres MQ here. So now if you've got a database, you've also got a message queue, which is like, it's amazing. And from the Spring perspective, you're just using channels and inbound adapters and all that stuff, and nothing special. It's just same old verb and idiom and everything. Okay, so what do we got here, friends? So we got the files input. And when the file arrives here, we're going to create a new file. Oh, okay, one more thing. I got to do this. So final file root equals, take that, private, create a new file here, new file root path. Okay, there we go. Oops. I forgot something here, didn't I? Repository. Okay. Okay, so good. So there's the root, and then there's the path. So it'll be home desktop repository path, which is the custom file name, right? And I'll send that off as a message on the channel. Why is this an issue though? Maybe I'll just make this a variable. Initializing the constructor. That way everybody's happy. This is that root. Okay, and actually I don't need that anymore, do I? I don't need the stored as a separate variable. Solves two problems. Good, so now I've got this .root, the path, and I'm going to send that in the channel. And then the other way to get the data is from this file system inbound adapter. So I can either get a hold of a channel and then stuff a message in the channel myself directly, or I can use an adapter, and then the adapter will put messages in the channel. Either way, files is my channel, and all roads, all messages in the files channel, all roads lead to this flow down here, which when it gets a file object, a Java.io file, will then transform it to a file event and then write out some stuff and then send that off as a reactive stream, which I'm then using in GraphQL as a subscription. So let's restart that and see if that works. And actually, while I'm here, since I'm doing the initialization anyway, assert state this dot root dot exists or this dot root dot make clears. The root directory for the repository must exist. Okay. This dot root dot exists. Okay, restart that again. Why is it so sad? Application.files. Oh, it has no subscriber. Okay, so that's the same issue I had a minute ago. Let's see. Because I'm doing something weird here. Normally when Spring Innovation starts up, you have the whole pipeline fleshed out. But the way I'm doing this is I've got back pressure. I've got this reactive pipeline. So I'm creating a pipeline here, but it's only getting created when somebody subscribes to it. And that only happens when a client makes a call to the subscription endpoint. So as a result, when Spring Innovation starts up, for this part, I told it to auto startup equals false unless I'm doing a subscription. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? That means that there's data. Oh, is it because of this? So if I go to delete all that for a second. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's kind of an interesting corner case. I would have to write some code to handle that case, but I think it's possible. Let me see here. Okay, so it's fine right now. Let me go to the console, restart the subscription. Now you can see it started the subscription. And now I can go ahead and create the files, and then everything's fine. Okay, there you go. So it's just a matter of like, you can't have events in there before the client has started subscribing. Otherwise, Spring Innovation thinks that there's an event bound for nothing. There's an event that needs to be dispatched, but there's nothing to get it, and that confuses Spring Innovation. If this flow, see, it doesn't know about this flow, and it doesn't exist yet. So Spring Innovation is unhappy at startup time. So you'd have to write some code to say, okay, hey, if there's a client subscription, great, route. Otherwise, abort the pipeline. Okay, so what about that? We did the file system. That creates the event. What about if we just post to our API, localhost 8080, curl -d. What did I say? Path. I'm going to call this foo.txt. The right protocol. I have a REST endpoint, right? Of files. Curl. Okay, localhost 8080 files. I do. Add request. Maybe it's just this. Oh, the path. Okay. I was wrong on several different accounts. So equals foo.txt or add request. Just request param, right? Okay, so it's like that. Yay, there we go. So I submitted the request manually through the HTTP endpoint. That created a message. I put that message in the files channel, or I can go to the command line here in the in directory, and I can just create a new file here. That also creates the event. So both pipelines end up at the same reactive stream thing. And if I go to the console here, the browser, what is this data path? Blah blah blah. Okay, so there's the data, and you can see some of them are coming to repository. That's the curl that I'm doing to the post endpoint, and some of them are from the file system. Either way, they both end up in this reactive stream. Okay, that's Spring Negation, kind of. I mean, we haven't begun to like get into the depths, but you can kind of see it's really, really powerful. It's a great way to build and compose distributed system pipes and filter style. And so we have to learn. Now that we've kind of got that, we understand inbound and outbound adapters and channels. Well, let's return to our Spring Batch code. Kill this process. Yeah. Let's see. Close that. Close that. Definitely close Twitter. What a distraction. Close that. Close this. Close that. Integration. Subscription. Get reset. Hard. No. Subble Emacs at ignore. Do I have bin somewhere? It's like a directory to ignore. Oh, there it is, right there. Why would that be? Okay, git status, git add, simple utility scripts, git push. Okay. RMRF in, RMRF YouTube service, that's fixed. Integration subscriptions, is there anything in there that we care about still? No, I don't think so. RMRF that. Okay. Okay. What else do we got here, friends? Add repository. What is repository? Well, that's the demo, right? Okay, so repository. Good. And scaling, so make their batch reference. And that's all. Move scaling demos to batch reference. Move Michael Manila to batch reference. Okay. Today we're going to continue our Spring Batch code, but yesterday we spent some time reviewing Michael Manila's old demo on partitioning and chunking and all that. And the reason we're doing this, because imagine in Spring Batch, you've got these steps, you get to a step where now you're doing something long running. You want to do things in concurrence whenever possible, right? You just debugged your GitHub action for an hour because you forgot a curly bracket. Oh dear, yeah. Are you running a JavaScript GitHub action? Those are fun. Yeah, okay, so, and the worst part is with GitHub actions, it's not like you can test quickly in your local machine. You have to deploy the thing and then kick off a build to use it, and it's by definition some of the slowest code you can write. Not that I don't love GitHub actions, don't get me wrong. I did a YouTube video on that too, actually, GitHub actions recently. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, act is okay. I don't know. I just feel like it's doesn't quite match my experience. Let me see. Okay. We got to make this work, friends. Now that we have all this stuff in our head, all we got to do is get it working by itself in isolation with our example, with our batch app. So let's open up Michael's thing. I'm going to piecemeal, just copy and paste until it works. What could go wrong? So CD scaling demos, idea, pond.xml. All right. So here's the flow that we looked at yesterday. And yeah, okay. Which one did we decide was the useful one? Here's the leader node. And the leader has a request, it's a message channel. So we get a flow from requests. We send it out over RabbitMQ. We're using the Spring Framework messaging, Spring Integration messaging template. Yeah, Spring Integration messaging template. I don't know why we're using that though. Where are we? Oh, we're using it for this. Okay. And then this is the thing. So we have like a proxy step, like a facade. It's a step that doesn't actually do reading and writing. All it does is it takes the payload that's supposed to be processed in the Spring Batch step and it writes it out using this chunk message channel item writer, right? So it sends it out using this messaging template onto a channel, and the channel is requests, and then it looks, and then it monitors the responses that come from replies. Okay. This chunk handler, where does that get used? That gets used somewhere. Step 1. Oh, step 1, right there. Step 1, remote chunk handler factory bean. Remote chunk. So who's using this chunk handler? Ready? Okay. What is... Am I missing something? I am missing something. I don't like that. I don't like it, not one bit. This is a chunk handler right here. Right? Right. Okay. So who's using this thing? Actually, let's just inject. Let's find who's using that thing. It's being provided to... I guess it's just literally factoring a bean of type... Oh, wait a minute. What is this factoring? It's creating a factory bean for a chunk handler. And who's using the chunk handler? Convenient factory bean for a chunk handler that also converts an existing chunk-oriented step into a remote chunk handler. Okay, so this is the actual, like, take the data. Okay, so what is a chunk handler? This is a interface for a remote worker and the remote chunking pattern. A request comes from a manager process containing some items to be processed. Once the items are done with, a response needs to be generated containing the summary of results. Okay, chunk handler. Handle the chunk processing. Okay, so this is specifically meant to do the remote processing pattern that we're looking at here today. Okay, so that's why it's not particularly familiar to me, but conceptually I get it. So it's going to use this item writer and it's going to work on this step. Okay, and then what is this? What is this? So, yeah, okay, so it turns this step into a chunk handler thing, a proxy, a facade. So we've got two flows. One is requests from the requests channel, and actually, I don't even know why we're using the string here. We could just use requests, right? We could say from that channel, send it to RabbitMQ using, and then we're using this template. Okay. We get the replies from RabbitMQ eventually on this. And then the reply flow is we're saying from RabbitMQ, send it on the reply channel. You have a lovely evening. Don't let your significant other feel left out. Yeah, don't do that. Obviously, priorities, my friend. Have a great day. And by the way, tomorrow's Valentine's Day. So I'll be in Chicago, unfortunately. And my better half has forgiven me. I've already begged for forgiveness because I have a business travel on Valentine's Day. But anyway, this week will be kind of a weird week. I'll try and stream. Obviously, I've got code to fix and finish, so I'll stream as much as I can. I'm glad you got your GitHub action fixed. Yeah, that's great. GitHub actions are fun. They are. I mean, GitHub actions is my all-time. It's one of the few things for which I want to pay more. You know, I just don't understand how come I can't pay them more. It just feels like I'm getting away with something, you know, like I'm taking advantage of them. I do pay. I pay whatever they ask me to pay. I mean, I'm so happy with my GitHub experience. They have been great to me. Okay. Anyway, so that's basically the flow. That's the outbound part. We got to make all that work first. So the first thing we need is we need read the data. That's this reader. Well, we've already got the reader. So I'm just going to do a SQL query instead of using a file system thing. And the SQL query is going to read from that table that we created, the year platform report table. That's interesting. What I want is actually, I want all the rows related to a given year. So I want all the platform sales for a given year, and that's what I want to send in aggregate, you know, one row at a time. I'll send all 5 or 10 or whatever rows as one aggregate type over to RabbitMQ, and then I'll have some code into the side that'll render the card or something, you know. Send an email or do something that takes a while, you know, whatever. You can just insert your own long-lived thing here. So, but for now, let's just see if we can make this all work. I think we can do it. It shouldn't be that hard. We've already got an understanding of all the moving parts. Okay. Should I create the step where I get the aggregate object first, or do I want to get the remote chunking first? I think I want to get the step with the aggregate introduced first, and then the final handoff will be to send it over RabbitMQ with this remote chunking thing. So before we do the remote chunking, which package is it? Yeah, this is remote chunking. Before we do remote chunking, let's just add one more step to our pipeline because right now, if I go to my table here, that's the other thing. I need to set up everything. Scaling demos, no. CD this, CD to batch, Docker. No, so cat Docker compose. First of all, I'm going to need RabbitMQ. So let me go ahead and add RabbitMQ to this mix. First of all, github.com, develop advocacy, repositories, Twitter gateway. There we go. I can just borrow, copy and paste. What could go wrong? Let's see. Actually, it just occurred to me. I have a meeting for which I'm late. Uh, I will pick this up later today. I have to jump off this meeting and do a quick call, and I'll be back in, I don't know, less than an hour, I expect. So, okay. Okay, I'll be back in a bit, my friends. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in like half an hour or so. I just realized I've got a meeting right now. It's just a quick sync up call for my time in Chicago. So I'll see you all soon.